once again listening to the HiTech podcast, and you are joined by Josh Swartz. That's me. Okay, that's me. That's who I am. And then you're joined by William Illingworth to some.
Who's that?
That's you. I was about to try to come up with a nickname for you on the fly because I don't really have one for you. And
that's dangerous.
The best I could come up with was the ill in my head, and that's not great. That's a bad nickname.
You were so close to keeping that to yourself.
I was really close. Now everyone can hear it, and I know you're going to hear it because Will's not going to edit this out.
What was that at our roommate's wedding? DJ Ill Will.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. DJ Ill Will.
What a wedding.
That is a name that totally fits Will. If I think of a DJ, I think of William Illingworth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Straight up. Me first every time. That's definitely the DJ you want at your wedding.
Yeah. Definitely. Hey, you did good. You did good at ours. Our wedding, me and my wife, we got married. Surprise! Spoiler alert.
Is that what you do?
Yeah, that's what you do at weddings. Wow. We didn't want to pay for a DJ, so we set up a Spotify playlist, and we eventually just got a DJ because I felt like you were always over at the phone, plugged into the speakers, changing music for people.
We didn't want to pay somebody, so we got Will to run the Spotify.
Yeah, it was essentially what happened.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it was a good time. Great wedding. Totally worth it.
It was a wonderful wedding.
It was a good wedding, actually. It was a pretty solid wedding. You guys should have been there, people. You didn't know me though, so yeah, there we go. Great.
Well done.
Solid stuff. So our podcast tonight, intros, things that we're gonna get into. So we just decided to have some fun in this one because we don't have fun in the other ones. To just be like, have a conversation of, what are you watching? We watch TV. We're like you people. We don't just read books. We also watch shows. So Will, what are you watching there, man?
You probably read more than I do these days anyways. I got a couple of different spaces, right? So we're both Marvel folks. I'm on WandaVision. That is dropping right now week to week. So we are keeping up with WandaVision, trying to see what's happening in the world of Marvel between phase 3 and phase 4. My wife and I like to dig into some of those, more dramas and things like that. But The Crown is a big one for us. We just finished season 4, I think, of that. Okay. And then the comedy. The comedy is Ted Lasso. And I'll tell you, Ted Lasso is the cure to 2020. The only problem with Ted Lasso is that it's on Apple TV Plus. And trust me, after this statement, they're not going to sponsor us. No worries.
We're killing sponsors. That's our goal through episodes. I think we've bashed several companies in the first handful of episodes that we've done in this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would back Will on that one. The Ted Lasso, he brought me and my wife into that one. And I agree. I didn't believe him. And then I watched it and I was like, this is the man that 2020 and 2021 needed. Yeah. Ted Lasso.
He's just pure.
Yeah, it was good.
Just pure.
But yeah, I'm similar to Will in that fact. Like we have similar tastes. So when we even thought about this idea, I'm not sure what we were thinking. It's basically just gonna be the same stuff.
Ditto. Yeah. Ditto.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So I've been watching WandaVision as well. I think it's good. You and I both agree. I think solid show. I think when they first pitched an idea of a robot and a witch and a sitcom, I was kind of like, that's not really what I wanted. And now I'm like, I'm sorry, I was a foolish moron. That was exactly what I wanted.
I repent.
You take it. Yes. Difference maybe been Sam, my wife and I, we've been watching MasterChef lately. I don't normally watch reality TV because it's, not great. But we've been obsessed with MasterChef recently. I think it's because I feel like I'm learning how to cook. I'm not trying it. That's ridiculous. But I know what's bad now. Because Gordon Ramsay tells me so.
Hey, the best thing for my steaks that has ever happened is watching a 7-minute YouTube video by Gordon Ramsay, including the step to make sure that you baste it with some butter. You're like, is it.
He changed my egg game, man. There was one episode they're making scrambled eggs, and I was like, why are they making scrambled eggs? These guys are supposed to be like pro chefs. And Gordon Ramsay made scrambled eggs like I've never seen. I didn't know it was humanly possible. There's you're just scrambling eggs. And he's like, butter, creme fraiche. I don't even know what the frick that is. He threw that in eggs and it looked amazing. Okay.
He had carte blanche to use creme
Yeah.
fraiche.
Yeah, he did. That's a word Will likes to use. If you don't know what it means, it's okay. Nobody else does. Only Will. He uses this. I'll let you in on the inside joke, folks. Listen to this podcast. Will and I went to college together, and at one point we were in a class, and Will used the word carte blanche in class, and I will not lie to you. Every single human being in that classroom started Googling on their laptops what carte blanche meant. The instructor just kept going like he knew what it was. I'm still not convinced he did know what it was. I think he was just pretending like he knew what you said.
You and our other roommate are like either sitting on either side of me or you're both to my left, and you both just kind of like look at me like, really? What?
Yeah, like it was the most pretentious word you could have used.
The professor used it back.
Yeah, he did, but I think he just
back.
assumed the context from what you said.
Shit.
I still don't know he knew what it meant. But we Googled it. So that's, if Will reuses that word again, there's the story, the context to what's happening.
So on the other one, what you watch and you know, I'm a pretty slow adopter to things, ironically. Like, I love tech. If you were to like see the bell curve kind of thing, like, am I the laggard? I am like probably really a laggard. So I am just getting to, for the first time, watch throughs of Big Bang Theory and Friends.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome
to the rest of the world.
Like 2 decades behind for Friends, a decade behind for Big Bang. Quality material. Yeah. Quality.
Both shows are over, and Will's over here, probably hashtagging about.
Have you heard of this new show? Okay,
like, this episode was crazy, guys, and the rest of us are just like, yeah, we saw that 30 months ago. I'm not sure what you. I'm pretty sure my sister has watched Friends on Netflix like more times than you've seen the first episode in her lifetime. She's watched Friends multiple times.
Yeah, that's it.
so there you go, folks. That's what we're watching. I know you're super excited. You're probably gonna go watch those shows now because you had no idea what they were. Or some of you are listening to this episode, just as late as Will listen to Friends. And you were like, man, that show ended forever ago. I don't know why you're talking about it. So there you go. On to maybe a little conversation.
Yeah, focusing things in a little bit. So last week, or in one of our previous episodes, who knows, you heard about digital whiteboarding from us, and we blitzkrieged again. We got you a lot of different content there. This week, before going into any apps, we're going to get a lot more focus this week with the apps, but the collaborative spaces themselves that we work in online, we wanted to just talk about this for a bit, because Josh and I, besides being remote since COVID, right before that, we have lived online. We communicate with one another through Slack. Everybody. We always send emails all day, every day. Josh is a huge Notion user, so there's tons of Josh's content, life, groceries, errands, personal goals in Notion, right?
Yeah. So if you guys don't know what Notion is, it's a document collaborative tool. That's why we're referencing it, and my entire life lives there. If it crashes, I will not know what to do.
Josh's second brain, if
it's literally called my second brain. That's not even like a thing that he's making up. It's titled my second brain.
So there are so many collaborative spaces, and there's so many ways we can look at them. I mean, technically, even Zoom is a collaborative space. We come together in a shared virtual space and we can collaborate, right? We're going to narrow it down for this conversation primarily to like collaborative document tools or collaborative document authoring tools. So later in the episode, you're going to hear us go into Word versus Google Docs online, right? Which one's better? What are we going to do for that? And that's going to be the tool of the day. But, if we're in a tool that allows us to collaborate, so we're in Notion, we're in Word Docs, we're in Google Docs, what are we trying to accomplish? What happened that in the kind of development of technology, we got these tools and we needed these tools, right? Because before a digital space for that, what did we do to collaborate, Josh?
We talked.
Paper?
That was weird. Yeah, paper. Yeah, we had big paper on the wall. We used whiteboards. The whole digital thing we did last time?
Whiteboards?
Probably. I don't,
Physical ones?
That seems like a
right.
thing.
So the first thing that I think is helpful to consider when we're going into these collaborative spaces, these tools, is what can we do with them to recreate that physical experience? Like I had tons of faculty come to me, in March 2020. I need to recreate the whiteboard. I need to recreate a post-it note activity. I need to, and we had to turn to these kind of collaborative spaces to find those needs for them.
Yeah. Here's a quick question though, like kicking us off because you made me think of this. Not scripted, folks. This is crazy. We're getting off script. We actually don't have a script.
No script.
No script, which is, I know, surprises
Outline.
all because we seem so organized. The question though, like at the core behind all of this, what do we think the purpose is? Like the intention for instructors, for faculty, teachers, who want to do this. Obviously, you say, like you've that same experience, I've that similar experience. They want to recreate something they're doing, most likely in the classroom. I think in some realm we're dealing with online space too, where it's just like they want to create some of that community or something. But there's probably, I think we could, if we talked about it, like a core purpose behind all of that.
I think I can come back to it's almost Confucian, right? It's almost like a Taoist creed here. I think it comes back to sharing meaning, right? The ability to share meaning. And I say that understanding that it fits in the context of shared text, shared images, outlines, documents, whatever, right? But in a face-to-face space, or Josh and I talking right now, we're sharing meaning by talking. And what we're referencing while we're talking is our Notion outline. And that's like the thing that's helping us come back to some sort of central meaning as we talk. I think that's what it comes to for me. Like if they're working on a paper together, the shared meaning is the assignment to accomplish the paper. If they're working on like a sorting activity, take this information and sort it in different categories. It's a meaning that they're trying to work with, and we're trying to, of course, make that sharing process, the function of sharing, easier in a digital context. Because if it's physical, I just pick a piece of paper up, hand it to you, or I whatever my realia is, hand it to you. You have it. Now I need a digital medium. What do you think? Do you agree?
No, I mean,
I
think I agree. Yeah, I think at the essence, it's like it's shared. I think you define shared meaning. I think I'm thinking maybe like an idea of like shared, bringing shared ideas together to create something, that is not just one person's work. In that space. Like think about it, if we're looking back at some of we joked about it, but the original classroom things that maybe collaborative documents spaces are trying to replicate is the fact that those are groups of students in an education instance coming together, working out a problem, maybe putting something together so that they can come together and present some type of idea that they've drawn together themselves. I think collaborative document space for a lot of instructors or faculty gives a way of them doing that. Now, that takes forms in different places. I mean, it can take forms from literally them grouping up in in class or in a, Zoom session, or just just online together, creating stuff into the documents and putting their ideas in there and using the chat functions that a lot of these tools have, the commenting functions, to start discussing the ideas, and then coming together, maybe if that's an element of what you have, to look over what you've created in there. This can be anything from actually working on papers together, shared notes. I see happening all the time, like having for an entire class to literally share their ideas with what they're learning in a shared notes environment. Creating like class wikis together. I've seen that happen a lot in this type of space where you're working together, and this is to your shared meeting idea, to discuss and work on coming together on meaning of words and terms in the class that you're working on. And I think it's this idea of having that improved thinking, deeper thinking happening because we're sharpening each other in that space, and collaborative documents can give you a space to do that in whatever type of form that takes inside your class or your course.
Yeah, and Josh, so many of those different ideas you're talking about, like I'm telling you, we're just firing pistons in my brain as I was going, like, man, isn't that constructivism? Isn't that like social learning theory, talking about Bandura? Isn't that like so much of what we see in educational psychology, and so much of what we see in like the current milieu of education, moving us towards a space where it's a co-constructed meaning? There's so much in that like theory space about it. And you were just like, boom, 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 nailing all these practical examples of how we're getting the students to do that through those activities you reference. And of course, what faculty member has never used or participated in peer review, right? And so
Oh
in a
yeah,
digital space, that's like the easiest way to do peer
yeah.
is put them in a Google document together. They can then use those chat features, the commenting features you were referencing, like all of that becomes a part of their process of doing peer review and group work. Man, like you can't deny the value of those kinds of things.
Yeah. And I think alone in a group space, if you're thinking about using this type of idea and try to do a collaborative document space, which has become more of a topic for people in the COVID era where we can't be in a classroom together in spaces, all of a sudden now we realize this is a tool that we can use and we can grab it. But I think where it really has its advantage in that shared meaning is that it becomes that document for that group or the students or the class or whatever it is. It becomes a central space to have that working out practically there. Because what are you going to have if you don't do something like this? You're going to end up having students creating stuff on their own in different documents and things that they're using, and then maybe you'll come together in a group space, or you'll have them post to something in your class or something like that. But there's a bunch of stuff that was happening on those pages separate that's not being captured in that area. And obviously there's a time where you don't want activities where students are coming, you want an activity where students are coming up with original thought. And so without seeing other people's work. And so that collaborative doc maybe is not the best starting point for something like that. But in these type of activities, you want them to start getting ideas off of each other, because the end result is what you're going for, a better formed, deeper idea that they've challenged each other on. And collaborative doc spaces, I don't think are going to be a silver bullet to make that all happen. Technology doesn't work perfectly. Things are going to work. We always have idealistic ideas about how this is going to work. But it does start to get you a little closer there. And I think that you can find value that in an online course, fully face-to-face course. I've seen instructors do this well, like having groups have collaborative doc activities together where they're working outside of class, but they're sharing this together, and the instructor can see it and give feedback on what they're coming up with to help them pull together stuff. And we're focusing on collaborative docs, but it doesn't just have to be collaborative docs. It can be collaborative presentation tools like a PowerPoint or like Google Slides or something along those lines. I think are a similar component. They fit the same need, I think, in certain ways.
Yeah, and you make some great points in there about like the time and place and when they're taking place in these activities. Like there's great value in using these collaborative spaces with the students, without the students, amongst the students, with just your content with this. Like it's almost limitless, right? It is an open canvas. Just let them work in the space, either direct them or let them do it organically, et cetera, et cetera. It's really, I think, an important concept in educational technology to deal with, because even more so, we're focusing, like I said tonight, we kind of penned ourselves in on like Word document or document authoring tools. Collaborative spaces show up in almost all of the ed tech tools I can think of that I use, right? Nearpod, for instance, an audience response system, has a collaborate board that literally allows students to see each other's posts and making them, right? Boom, there is a collaborative space inside another tool. And this becomes a really important practice because we see it in so many spaces. I'm going to do the perfect segue here and say, why don't we dig into then Google Docs, Word Docs, see how it works in those spaces, see what they can do for us in the higher educational technologies spaces.
And I think we picked these two if you've been sleeping under a rock or some kind, mainly because they are obviously the two large pillars of collaborative document work. I would argue in EdTech. One maybe a little bit more than the other, for sure. But they both, I think, are kind of at an institution. You see an institution either using both of these or one of these happening somewhere in a collaborative doc space. Now, there's obviously a big breadth of tools. We mentioned a couple of them, but we're not going to dive deep into those because a lot of them come with paid structures and things beyond what you're willing to take on. But these are kind of our two big ones. So
and what's really interesting about these two tools, I'll be honest, doing some quick Wikipedia, work here. Um, Word, I think, started in 1983 as a
Oh, gosh.
processing tool. Okay.
Is that
Google
when they still had the
Docs.
little micro clip thing that showed up or whatever his name was? Was that
Oh
earlier?
no,
Was
Clippy
that
was like a product of XP or Vista.
okay?
That was like a
Oh, I miss Clippy. He was solid.
mid two
Yeah, we
thousands.
just dated ourselves, but that's fine.
We should have him on the show as a guest.
Yeah, he was a
Um,
good little help thing.
so Word 83, we're looking at nearly 40 years, and Google Docs came out in 2006.
Oh gosh.
Barely 15 years old, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out because I still believe, and I believe Josh, backs me up on this. Google Docs wins by a landslide in the battle between the two tools.
Ah, yeah. Well, let me preface this because if anybody from the institution I work at hears this, I'm gonna get something from them, an email. I'm talking to you, education department, if you ever listen to this. So for context, the institution I work at right now is a Microsoft mainly institution. And I think we're moving towards having some Google integration into things, but we have the Microsoft suite. So Microsoft Word Online right now is currently the thing we're using collaboratively. Because it fits into the students' accounts that they already have. There's a lot of infrastructure on the IT. I'm not throwing them under a bus in this space. I understand why we're in this space that we're using Microsoft Word Online right now, because for students, there's a quick access to it in the suite that they already get in that space. But I absolutely agree with Will. We were talking about this beforehand. We were joking. It's Google Docs versus Microsoft Word, but it's really just like, why is Google Docs incredibly better than Microsoft Word? Because the Microsoft Word Online or Word, or that's the first problem. When I say Google Docs, we know exactly what we're talking about. When I say Microsoft Word, we're like, we talking about the app? We're talking about the weird online version that's not
the
quite the
app?
same as the app? Yeah, we're talking about
Mac
the phone app. We talk about whatever
PC?
other weird things they came up
online,
with.
desktop,
yeah.
Office 2016.
See, you're listing off so many things. And you're all might be laughing and be like, there's no possible way. There is. All of those exist, and they are not fully integrated with each other. Okay, that's a thing in Microsoft.
They're getting there. They're getting
there. I will give
Microsoft.
Microsoft that. They have come far in the past like 2 years. They used to be much worse. Like we'll admit that. Like they're getting closer to where Google Docs is. I still have some issues with their infrastructure as a tool, and I think students have more problems getting into it and editing than in a Google Doc. Would be one of my problems with it. But let's talk about it. Why? We've already given our premise, right? Google Docs better. Why do we think Google Docs is better? I'll let you start this one, Will, since you have a little bit more freedom to work with Google Docs than I do.
Yeah, in an academic sense. I mean, I've been using Google Docs. I tried to quickly find out how old my Gmail account is, and there's work you got to do to figure that out. I'm pretty sure I've been using it since 2006. Like I remember the glitchiest, oldest Google Docs with the most pared down possible features. And to think about that compared to today, like you can go into any Google Doc and type simultaneously with someone else, and type over top of each other, type into each other's sentences, delete each other's, and it doesn't fail. It keeps up with it, and its version tracking, its history tracking of those edits is impeccable. I mean, really, it just is outstanding how well they've done. Because I remember times where if you were trying to edit at the same time, or if you had like 3 or 4 people editing at the same time, it wasn't as good at keeping up. So functionally, their synchronicity, if that's a word, the ability to be synchronous with one another is impeccable. And more so, if we've already set up the premise of collaborative spaces, good thing. This is good for learning. It fills in many existing educational learning theories, right? Then the next step, if I know it's a good tool and a good practice, is to affirm that whatever they do in it is safe. And I mean that at a couple levels, but like no student, and I've done it, I know Josh has done it, student wants to lose their work.
No.
No,
like, and that is so. Like, I want to lead into something here because we're starting to talk about the two tools. But I want to for those of you listening And I know probably most of you working in education, hopefully you've gotten some kind of involvement with these, because they're kind of, I think, collaborative document tools, one of the first like ed tech things a lot of people get into. But when we're looking at collaborative documents, I think there's a couple things we're looking for to make them work well. One, to what Will said, right? The way that students can edit it together, they're not going to have an issue where they're editing on top of each other, right? So let me give you an example, right? If you were just editing like a static web page or something like that, student could easily get into that static web page. One edits, hit save, but is also doing it while another student's editing and hit save, and they could delete each other's work. Okay. Yep. Google Docs does a good job of making sure they know each other when they're editing. They show up in there. You can see their little icons at their cursors when they're editing. And you can see that. Word Online gotten better over the last 2 years at doing this, but they still have some problems. They have problems where they don't catch edits quick enough, and students end up overdoing each other's work, or work gets lost. I've seen that happen once or twice in Word Online. I will say I've seen it less, but Google Docs has been doing that much better for a longer time, and it feels smoother when you're doing it in Google Docs for the students. So I think that's one of the big major ones right there. That ties into another issue that I would say I'm always looking for, which is that the students can access it easily, get in, they don't get cut out of the doc, they're dropped out of the doc, they can't log in right. Google, I think, does that a good job. You get in immediately, you share a document with someone else, they can get into it immediately. Get rid of them. Yeah, it's hard to get out of them. Like in these collaborative docs, guys, you got to remember, if you're like in our institutions, they integrate with the learning management system we use. But if you're using this just in your classroom, probably what you're going to have to do is create the document. You're going to have to share it with your students so you get access to it. You can put that link inside whatever course you're doing, LMS you're using, or if you're not using an LMS, you can, email it to them. But you want to know that when you give that link to your students, they're going to get in. They're going to be able to get in. They're not going to get blocked. They're not going to have login errors. They're not going to have issues. Right. And I think Google Docs just does that smoother. Their login process is a lot smoother. Microsoft, there's like 3 steps to get in. And sometimes when you get in, I think they finally now changed it just this year, but it used to be that you had to click another edit button to actually start editing the document. Google Docs is just like, no, you're here.
This is the document. Welcome.
So those are the 2, I think, major things I'm looking for to make sure a collaborative document tool works well. And I think that's been one of the things I'm unhappy about with Word Online in our space.
And to extend that point, your second point there, Josh, about the editability, the being able to edit at the same time, there's an extension of that I think is so important. It's the commenting or the track changes feature, right? So Google, from almost day one, I mean, it's been doing it so long, I don't even remember when they added the feature. You could add comments on any word, any line, any space, any image, anything in the document. You can add a comment on it. And in those comments, you can tag each other. And in those threads, you can kind of work it out, in a threaded response and resolve the thread. And it's very clean, very easy. You can accept changes, etc. That's been in there for years with Google. Microsoft is only just getting to catch up, and the tagging's still not great, and the resolution's still not great. Track changes was Microsoft's first, at least between these 2 tools. But I think that Google got there first and has been doing it longer, which just makes that a better experience.
They clearly have a better user experience for it. So just context here, those of you who aren't using both, or maybe you're debating about using one or whatever, or you're in an institution like mine, and you have a big bad guy like me who has to hold the line that you have to use Microsoft for right now, and you're trying to come up with an argument of why you should. User experience, if I highlight a word in Google Docs, immediately on the side, it gives me 2 options. It gives me a blue icon that's a little comment bubble to add a comment. And then one of the things that Google Docs just added recently, I don't know how long ago they added this because I only caught it in the last month or so that it was there. The suggest edits thing is beautiful. They also add under that blue comment, there's a green box where you can actually click on it and suggest an edit in the document without actually editing the person's thing. So where this works great, right? You're doing maybe peer review, or students are collaborating together to create something. One student, maybe one night, is writing out a paragraph of what they think a description wise or a definition. Another student can drop in that night and be like, I'm not quite sure, I read this differently. And without actually changing their stuff, can make a suggested edit that the other student can see and then approve and change what they're doing. Um,
And that feature's been there, but they're now integrating it that daily. Like that
yeah,
is new to that spot, but you had to go to review or track changes kind of features in Google Docs to activate
yeah,
that
that's a good point.
separately, which is so good that it's becoming a part of that because that's what we need to be doing. We need not be just deleting each other's words and losing track of our workflow. But we need to be like, I think identifying issues, pointing out change suggestions, working through those in conversation, and then someone's approving the change. Like that's a functional and, if you will, critical way to work through, some editing, to work through peer review. Excellent. Now, we're beating up on Word. Forgive us, for we have sinned, right? It's the All Father. It's been there since 1983. It's not going to go anywhere. For the longest time, and I remember this in college, Josh, I wrote my papers in Google Docs, for instance, if I was not at my personal computer or if I just wanted to make sure it was doing like autosave, right? And then when I was done at that time, I still had to eventually copy it into Word, format it into MLA, and then be
Yeah.
able to submit the docs, format, because Word had the better formatting features, and Word could give
Yeah.
me MLA citations, and Word could give me so much that Docs didn't have.
And there are files. Like, for all that I beat up Word, okay, there's one thing that Word still did that Google Docs has never done, and there's a reason they're good at what they do as a digital collaboration doc area. They are that. That's their thing. Like, yeah, you
Right.
have an app that you can download, but it's still like a digital uh, repository, kind of cloud space of writing. Now they're really doing it well now because that's where everything's moving. But you're still probably having your students submit documents in Word in that space. And Word Online at least is the same interface that your students work with. I do find that like older students sometimes struggle less with Word Online in certain places because they're used to using Microsoft Word. So it's not entirely a bad space.
Yeah.
It does have comment features. All the comment stuff we're talking about, you can do commenting in there. You can do all the major stuff I think you can do in collaborative. We use Word Inline in our institution, and while I get annoyed with it sometimes, it still generally is working. Students are
Yeah.
doing it, and they're
And
able
it's
to get their work done.
it's modern. The Microsoft Word's modern platform is sufficient for the, I think, premises we discussed in collaborative spaces, and I think it's sufficient still for like ease of access for all of your students at your institution being able to complete their assignment, right? That was not always been consistent in the past. Like if you didn't have Word, you couldn't make a doc file, or you
Yeah,
had to pay for something, or you had to go find an open source tool to, and then convert the. We have Word, we have Google. They're both excellent. They both get that job done. I think Josh and I we just have this penchant for how good Google Docs has always been and continues to get. They just stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of
yeah,
their
they're
competition.
clean, and I think they work well. Either way, I think either of these tools would work well for what you're doing. I think a couple before we kind of close out this app section. I think a couple things I want to touch on just for those of you who may not have used this much, or you're using it, but I would say maybe not in like an intentional way, because I see this happen a lot. Like people want to use these collaborative document tools, and their immediate response is, "I used to either do this in class, or I know that when it comes to technology, Google Docs is a thing that gets used, so I want to use this tool." But there's a
My
lot.
kids are already using
Yeah, my
it,
kids
or
are
my
already
kids,
using it.
yeah,
I
yeah.
want to. There's not a lot of intentionality behind it. So I think a few things I would recommend if you're trying to do this, whether you use Word Doc Online or Google Docs, is one, just make sure you got a clear intention and instructions behind this type of idea, what you're going to do with them. There's a lot of like intentional activities that you can do. I listed some of them off, but just going back through them. Well, I mentioned peer review. Like using Google Docs as a peer review tool is great. Have one student write up a portion, they share it with another student, that person reviews it. They can submit the final online doc to you, and you can see both the comments, and then you can comment back to them. It's a great peer review tool in there. I mentioned an activity that I see happen in our space a good bit, which is this kind of online wiki idea.
Mhm.
Um, for you guys who don't know what that is, it's a great way to have students work out definitions of terms in your course. So maybe you're using a lot of terms, maybe you're actually teaching grammar, you're teaching vocabulary, and you're working out these definitions. I think a wiki can be a great spot for them to do that. Actually, literally have the class throw in definitions, maybe assign them different groups of words or concepts, and then get down to, I think, a deeper level of thinking in that area as well. And I think, of course, just collaborative documents. Maybe they're working to write up a paper together. They're working on those elements. They can put that in to a Google Doc or a Word doc, kind of group assignments. I think are a great place for this to happen as well.
So, Josh, I think we really have determined why we've got a victor. These are not the only two tools in the space. Like Josh and I mentioned, there's so much more to collaborative spaces and even collaborative document authoring tools. There are big companies who've tried to come into the space and compete with Word and Google. They're not the only two. Just other ones like Quip or like Zoho don't get heard of and aren't familiar to folks. So if you're interested in something and you think that these, I might say the other thing people would be really concerned about or would pick one of these over the others is like security practices and data privacy. Like I could see some folks being leery of a Google, right? Or even leery of Microsoft. So if you're concerned for that kind of stuff, there are competitors out there. Definitely make sure you check that out. But we hope that this is helpful for you as you're considering what tool will serve you, because actually Word and Google can both be available for free for nonprofits and for smaller schools and stuff. So look into it if that's something that you feel is going to serve you and you don't have access to it at this time.
So again, thank you for joining us this week in the HiTech podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversations we had, the apps that we've recommended in here. Like we've been saying, we're looking forward to keeping rolling out some of the stuff to you guys, keeping these conversations going, talking about more apps, and talking about how you can use this technology in your classroom, harness it well, whether you're doing this virtually, whether you're doing it in a physical classroom. We are looking forward to having these conversations with you. So thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon, guys.
See ya.